Okay, welcome everybody. We'll be starting in just a minute. We're getting the sound and everything set up. Hopefully everybody can hear me. All right. Oh, this is good. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Welcome everybody. This is our monthly meeting, the Sunnyvale Democratic Club. I'm your newly elected president, Mike Cerrone. For people who were here at the last meeting, you know we have shuffled the board around a little bit. We have Crystal, who stepped down from president to take over membership, and she's also volunteered to run the entire hybrid meeting and sound system. So so this is exciting, and Ambrosia is what I was doing poorly, and David Newswanger still treasurer, and Martin Pine still political director. Gail is still secretary. Tara Martin-Milius is, who we all know and love, is at-large board member who lends her wisdom to us. And new members are Charlene Liu, who I think everybody knows probably, and Doug Kuntz, who can't be here today, but is vice president. So I think we can get started. Some announcements. Our meetings are all recorded and they're on the website. And I encourage everybody to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Then you will get notified when new recordings are available. And the link to the YouTube channel is also on our website at SunnyvaleDems.org. Our next meeting is our annual picnic on July 12th at noon, I think, at Ponderosa Park, which is where we've had it the last 2 years in Sunnyvale. It's the 12th, not the third Saturday. It was moved to avoid a conflict with the County Democratic Party picnic on July 19th, which is from 10 to 2 at Emma Prush Farm Park in San Jose. So anybody wants to go there, there'll be a lot of, dignitaries, elected officials speaking, and probably particularly people announcing their campaigns for various offices next year. So today, our primary topics are focused on two important actions by the city of Sunnyvale right now. One is the Village Center Master Plan, which is coming to City Council for final approval on July 1st. Everyone in the city lives close to a village center, so this is significant. The second topic will be a kind of a brief update on the Charter Review Committee, which is also very important. So, but first we're going to have a couple of quick updates on recent events, and we'll start with Martin Pine giving an update on the CADEM, the California Democratic Party Convention.
So last weekend in May was the California Democratic Party reorganizing convention. There were several members of the club were including myself, were delegates to that convention. The main purpose of that was to elect party officers for the upcoming 2 years. There were also some resolutions that were mostly they were adopted on consent, so I'm fine saying they were entirely uncontroversial, that were adopted. We also heard from a number of interesting speakers, most notably Cory Booker, Senator from New Jersey, and Tim Walz, Governor of Minnesota. Any questions, comments?
Are there any controversial issues that were voted on?
Not directly. There were some there were some resolutions that people brought that were related to the Middle Eastern conflict, but there were some technical issues with those. So most of those got ruled out of order for the convention and punted to the executive board meeting, which will be in August, of the California Democratic Party, which will be in August. That's the only. There was also some really nitpicky chartering organization discussion that honestly is too nitpicky for me to even try to summarize. Like this is me sitting through the rules committee meeting, which is not something most people do.
I'm just curious. We had other people there attending as well. What was the mood? Massive depression or optimistic outlook for the future?
Some of both. The feeling I got was just there was there's stuff we can do to keep fighting. There were a number of expected gubernatorial candidates were there. I think the biggest team was actually a guy whose name I've already forgotten, who's basically a random businessman that, well, he was able to hire a lot of people. I don't think that's going to translate into votes, but like the other known gubernatorial candidates were there and had some booze and spoke and such.
Okay. Any questions or comments from other attendees who were there?
Nobody on Zoom use the mic, which is what I was trying to.
I attended as a delegate, and I walked away feeling like we still have no plan as a national part. I mean, nationally. I don't know what we're going to do. We didn't get any marching orders, I don't think.
Hi, Eileen Lay. I also attended as a delegate. And one of the things that I noticed was that as a party, I feel like we're very focused on taking back the House and making Jeffries the majority leader. And while that's great, I didn't hear a lot at the party level, at the state level, about what's going on now and how to address it now. And I think it's good to be thinking about from now for a lot of people, for a lot of our people in communities that that's not something that the party is prepared to deal with, I think. I do want to say that as a local elected official, I've had several issues where I have been successful in reaching out to the county, the state, even Representative Khanna's office, and they are helpful, but I don't know what we're doing as a party.
Hi, it's Gail Rubino here. I was also a delegate, and the Santa Clara County delegates, we sort of all got together, which was kind of fun. And the other interesting thing about the convention was not the floor. It was really interesting meeting people from other places other than our place, and seeing that there's different issues in different parts of California. And I think for that reason, it's good to be a delegate. So I would highly suggest, if you're interested in a little bit of travel, that you consider it the next time that there's an election, because it's kind of fun. We had, after, I think it was Santa Clara County, we went over to Morton's Steakhouse, I think, for drinks at the last session. And that was great because I met a lot of people there that I had no idea existed on the planet. I talked to a lady from the VTA for at least 20 or 30 minutes on VTA issues, just, because the strike had just ended. So meeting people from around the state is really helpful, just to know what's cooking. And that's about it. The hotels were great. Patrick loves donuts. We had a donut meeting in the lobby of the Sheraton, and lots of people came to that because there were donuts. So it was really fun meeting a lot of people from around the state. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Martin. The other update is from something more of us can relate to, the fabulous recap of the fabulous 7x7K No Kings protest last week. Many of us participated locally. We had, it was 7 miles of protest from Tesla Palo Alto to Tesla Sunnyvale. Just curious, how many people in this room were participating in that? Okay, a lot of people. And, the goal was 7,000 people, but the estimates were more like 15 to 20,000. 7,000 was how many you needed to do a single line. And as you know, many areas were several deep. So nationwide, this may have been the biggest ever single day protest in American history. Obviously, there's estimates involved. One data journalist calculated the turnout nationwide between 4 and 6 million people, which is a lot of people, which would be 1.2 to 1.8% of the US population. This could exceed the previous record in recent history at the 2017 Women's March, when between 3.3 million and 5.6 million showed up. Some of us were there as well. And I can't believe we're still protesting the same thing. So here we are. There's been a recent study. Some scientists studied nonviolent movements in 323 revolutionary campaigns around the world that took place in the last century. And their conclusion was that nonviolent movements that had the support of at least 3.5% of a population always succeeded in triggering change. You can take that for what it's worth. That's about half of what we had at this last protest. So it's within striking distance. And change at this point can only be good. Any comments or about the protest? It was a lot of fun. The way it was laid out, instead of being a lot of people jammed on a street corner or around downtown somewhere, I mean, if you were going anywhere in any of those cities, Mountain View, Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, you could not miss it. And these numbers don't count all the people who are honking their horns and waving and cheering on. All very peaceful, went very well. Everybody had a great time. And yes, exactly. Very cheerful. Yes. So it was really kind of like a big party. So that's great. They're planning another one in July sometime. I'm not sure when. Obviously important to keep doing this. So, okay, well, we're a little bit ahead of schedule, but is Chuck on? Is Chuck Fraley on? Okay.
Yeah, I'm on Zoom. Was that loud?
Yeah, hold on. Try that again, Chuck.
Was that any
Chuck,
better?
can you say?
Or is it still really loud?
Okay. All right. Okay, good. So now we're moving to our first topic. You guys can come up here. So village centers. So now we're going to hear about the village center plan. So first from Chuck Fraley, who gave a highly acclaimed presentation recently at a Livable Sunnyvale meeting on this subject with city staff. Sean Mendred and Jeff Cucinato were there. And then we'll also hear from Christine O'Gwyn and Himanshu and Alka Sethi, who are here, and residents who are directly impacted by these developments. Gail has also been following this and may have a comment or two, I'm just guessing. The master plan went before the Planning Commission on June 16th. So because of Brown Act limitations, you will not hear comments from myself or Martin or any planning commissioners. So I'm glad we have some other people who are here who can address this. So Chuck, go ahead. Are you able to share your?
Yeah, let me share my screen here. All right, yeah, so thank you, Mike. Yeah, so as Mike mentioned, this is a presentation we did at Livable Sunnyvale on the Village Center Master Plan last week. So to start with, the motivation behind our interest in the village centers is originally the idea behind the village centers was what you see on the left in this slide. The city wanted to have these redeveloped into mixed-use areas with kind of vibrant retail and a combination of housing, all in the same area. But what we've actually been getting, some of these centers have actually started to redevelop. And the picture on the right is actually what's gone in at the corner of Fremont and Sunnyvale, Saratoga. And it's mostly just townhouses is what's getting built there. Maybe one or two storefronts at the sites, but where we began, just mostly developments containing townhouses and very little retail. And so the village centers, where these are, is it's 7 different centers located throughout Sunnyvale. So this is a map of Sunnyvale, and the little orange blobs are where the village centers are located. And these were all kind of older strip malls. And so the idea was that these properties are getting a little bit older. It'd be nice to get them redeveloped, and it'd be nice to have them redeveloped into kind of vibrant mixed-use areas. And so the city identified 7 of these across the city that would be good candidates for mixed-use development. And so far, there's actually plans that have been submitted or developments that are going on at 5 of these different village centers. The first one is the picture that I showed in the last slide, is Fremont Corners at the corner of Fremont and Sunnyvale, Saratoga. And what they're building there is 85 townhouses and just a little bit over 10,000 square feet of retail. They kind of kept the Jake's Pizza and 1 or 2 other retail storefronts that are there, but it's mostly townhouses that are going in. There's a second development that has been approved by the city. Plans were submitted and approved by the city, but the current but it seems to be on hold at this point. Construction has not started, and we haven't heard anything about how it's going to move forward at this point, but the plans have been approved. And this is for a development of 114 townhouses at the corner of Fremont and Mary. And so one of the corners there's a whole bunch of medical office buildings there. That's the corner that's getting redeveloped. And so they're going to put in townhouses there, and they're actually doing a reasonable amount of office space. They're putting out 35,000 square foot of office space to replace the medical offices that are there right now. Then the third one, this is a plan that's been submitted to the city but hasn't been approved. This is at the Village Center on Duane Avenue at Fair Oaks Plaza, and they're planning on putting in 81 townhouses and then 1 small mixed-use building. Oops, sorry, I went the wrong way. The fourth one is at the Lakewood Shopping Center. So this is at the corner of Lawrence Expressway and Lake Haven. And this is a development where plans have been submitted for 100 townhouses and a little 10,000 square foot retail strip with like maybe 3 or 4 little shops in it. And then the final one, this is actually something we heard about at the Planning Commission meeting. I haven't seen any details on this, but during the Planning Commission meeting, one of the members of city staff said that there's been a new plan submitted for the village center at the corner of Old San Francisco and Wolf. The comments were it's going to be mostly townhouses. Will probably look like a lot like what all the other ones are so far, but we have not seen any of the plans or any of the details on that one yet. And so one question that comes up a lot is kind of why are we getting these types of developments? So the city put together a plan that said, okay, we want to get mixed use here. We want to get retail on the first floor with housing above it. So why hasn't it turned out that way? And one of the main reasons is because of a lot of state laws that have been passed since the village center plan was originally envisioned. So the village centers were originally envisioned in 2017 is when the city adopted the plan for these village centers. And since then, there's been a number of state law changes that have affected what is actually getting built there. And most of these bills, so the state's been passing laws to try and increase housing production. SB 330, Senate Bill 330 is one that you'll hear referenced a lot. That's kind of the main one that was passed in 2019. But there are kind of several others that have also been passed over the past numbers of years. But the state has been really trying to encourage housing production. We've been really low for a long time, so the state's tried to come in and do some things to try and get more housing built in the state. And the main conceptual idea behind these state laws is that it says the cities can set rules for what can be done on housing in housing development. So the city can set rules for properties that are zoned for housing. But if the development meets the rules, the city has to approve it. So the city can't go change the rules out from under the once a plan's submitted, the city can't go back and change the rules and say, no, you have to do something different. The city has to set some rules up front about what can be built. And then if a plan is submitted that meets all of those requirements, then the city essentially must approve it. There's another set of state laws that also grant exceptions to developers. So if a developer comes in and says, hey, some of these rules are too burdensome, the city has to grant exceptions to those. And a lot of this was done is there have been a lot of cities, not really Sunnyvale, but a lot of cities throughout the state that have done a lot of things to actively block housing. So the developer would come in and propose a development, and then the city would go and say, oh no, we're going to change the rules and say, no, you can't build it there. Or they've come up with kind of some really bizarre rules that basically make it impossible to get something built on a property. So the state has been trying to push back on the cities being able to do these things to block housing development. And that's affected the village center rules because originally kind of how the village centers were envisioned. Originally, the plan was to have a negotiation process for each village center. So the city didn't define very clear rules for all these village center sites. They said when a developer wants to come in and build something at these village centers, we're going to have this public engagement program. And through the process of this public engagement program, we'll come up with what are all the different requirements for the village centers. And that's basically the thing this state has said, no, you can't do that. You can't have these ambiguous definitions of what can be built there. You have to come up with a set of rules that a developer can read and be able to follow. And if they meet those rules, then the development has to be approved. And so what the city is currently in right now is there aren't a whole lot of concrete rules for these village centers. Because the idea was, well, we're going to do these public engagement programs and figure out the rules as we go along. And so since there aren't a whole lot of real concrete rules, the developers can do more or less what they want. They can find loopholes on how things are worded. They can take advantage of things that weren't precisely defined anywhere else. And they can essentially submit plans, which is not really what was envisioned for these village centers. And the city doesn't have a whole lot of ability to enforce any requirements. And so that brings us to the Village Center Master Plan. And so Sunnyvale's been working on kind of this new set of rules for the Village Center. So a set of concrete, objective standards for these village centers that they would be able to enforce and say, this is the type of development we want there. And the master plan also has kind of in addition to kind of these rules on how tall the buildings are, what the setbacks are, kind of architectural look and feel things. It also has an overall strategy on how to get housing and retail built at these sites. And we're currently in the middle of this process. So as Mike mentioned, on June 16th, it went before Planning Commission, and then on July 1st, it's going to come before City Council. And they're going to take some action on it there, hopefully. All right, so before getting into a few of the details of the master plan, just a little background on why it's important to actually build housing and retail at these sites. So as everyone knows, housing is really expensive around here. So the picture on the left, that's a little screenshot I did of the website for the Martin, which is the new big apartment building that just got built downtown. It's a great development. We need all those apartments, but the prices are extraordinary. So on the left, if you want a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment in that development, it runs at least $4,500 a month. If you want a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, it's at least $5,500 a month. That's just insane prices for housing. And these high housing prices are causing all kinds of problems. Why people are moving out of state. It's why we have so many unhoused in the area. A lot of different studies have been done looking at different parts of the country saying, oh, why does one part of the country have more unhoused than the other? They look at things like, oh, is it the weather? Is it the proportion of the population that has mental illnesses, things like that. And the reason they come back to over and over again is it's simply the cost of housing. The areas of the country where housing is really expensive is where you have a lot of unhoused. It's what these high costs of housing is why so many people are going to SES for food every week. They're spending all their money on rent and they don't have enough money for food. And it's why everything else around here is so expensive. People have to pay their employees a wage so that they can pay rent, and that drives up costs for everything else. And the primary reason why housing is so expensive, we just haven't built enough. So back in the 70s and 80s, California was building 200,000 housing units each year. By the 2010s, it had dropped down to about 68,000 units per year. Even though the population of the city increased quite a bit, the housing production had kind of fallen off a cliff. Today, we're starting to make some progress getting back. We're up at about 140,000 units produced each year. Last year was particularly bad, but the average over the past couple of years has been about 140,000 units. So whether or not that's related to the housing laws that the state has passed is unclear, but we are starting to move in the right direction on housing production, but we're still far from where we need to be. But in addition to housing, and something that doesn't get talked about too much, is we also need the services to go with it. We need grocery stores, we need daycares, we need restaurants. We can't just build housing without all the other things that people need to live their daily lives. And one topic that's come up during the discussions on the village centers is the need for retail is actually a little bit different in different parts of the city. So one thing we kind of looked at is how grocery stores are distributed throughout the city. So again, this is a map of Sunnyvale, and that kind of dark blue line through the middle is essentially the Caltrain tracks. And north of the Caltrain tracks, there's just a handful of kind of large grocery stores. So the big red dots are kind of the large Safeways, Lucky's, kind of the large full service kind of supermarket chains. The little kind of medium-sized dots are more of your smaller grocery stores. So things like Zanotto's or Taj Mahal or kind of some of the India Cash and Carry. Actually, you might want to consider India Cash and Carry one of the big grocery stores, but kind of more the medium-sized grocery stores. And then there's some small little dots spread throughout there that are like the small corner markets that you can go pick up a few things here and there. But you can kind of see on the picture, kind of most of the grocery stores in the city are kind of south of the Caltrain. There's a handful north, but to the south, there's a lot more prevalent. And the way I like to look at that is I actually live kind of down near Sarah Park in the bottom left corner. For me, my kind of daily life, if I want to go to the grocery store, is a lot different than someone that's living up in one of the mobile home parks in the northern parts of the city. I've got lots of choices where I can go that's very convenient and easy. But other parts of the city don't have those luxuries. And with how these village centers are getting redeveloped, so this next slide, 3 of those kind of mid-sized groceries are getting eliminated by the village center redevelopment. And the big Lucky's that's over in kind of the north part, kind of that big blob on the left side, kind of to the north, that's the Lucky's, which is another one of the village centers that's been identified. So already there's kind of a little bit of a shortage of grocery stores in the northern part, and as these village centers get redeveloped, they're losing more and more access to that. And so what does the Village Center Master Plan propose to do about this? So I took an example of the Lucky Village Center. So this is the Village Center at the corner of Matilda and Maud. It's got a big Lucky supermarket there. There's a Bagel Street Cafe. There's a Starbucks. There's a little deli, I think. We used to go there for lunch. A couple other little shops through there. And this is one of the village centers. It's about 4.5 acres, and it currently has 47,000 square feet of retail. But the way it's zoned right now is the developer could come in. Sorry, my blurred background is going nuts. Right now, it's zoned as a village center, so a developer could come in and build zone for about 18 units per acre, and a developer could come in and replace this with about 80 housing units. And there are technically requirements in the village for the village centers to have some amount of retail, but as we've seen, because of these state laws, those requirements are very difficult for the city to enforce. So what the village center master plan proposes to do is to actually take this village center and split it into two halves. So they split it into kind of the orange part by the corner. They have zoned that for village center mixed use. So an area where you could build a mix of housing and retail. And then the purplish part, kind of on the other section of the property, they've zoned that as commercial only. So they've taken the part kind of basically where the Lucky Store is and kind of most of the shops are, and changed the zoning of this property from all mixed use, which is all village center mixed use. And they've changed it so just kind of the one corner by the street remains mixed use. And they've increased the amount of the housing density that you can get built on that corner. But then they said the rest can only be used for commercial purposes. And I often find kind of these plans sometimes difficult to read. They talk about zoning and densities per acre. I like to try and think about just kind of what could be built kind of with this new zoning. And these are some estimates. So these are kind of estimates we've done just kind of based on the pictures that were in the Village Center Master Plan. So they may not be quite precise, but they should be a reasonable idea of what could be built there. On the commercial part, the Village Center Master Plan says you take the area of land that is zoned for commercial and you take 25% of that. And that's the number of square feet that you need to actually, the minimum amount of retail square footage that you need at the property. So for that purple part, it's about 3 acres. And so 25% of 3 acres, a developer would need to come build 30,000 square feet of retail in that area if they wanted to redevelop it. On the mixed use side, this particular one, they've zoned for 56 units per acre, and it's about 1.7 acres. So a developer could build up to about 92 housing units there. And for all the mixed use zones, they still actually do have a retail requirement. And for this particular one, it'd be about 7,150 square feet of retail that would technically be required for a developer to build there. But most of those requirements really aren't enforceable. So what would likely to get built is kind of about 90 housing units and kind of as much retail space as the developer decided they wanted to build. Now, there was a question, this is something new that came up at the Planning Commission. There was a question that was asked by one of the commissioners, and I did not fully understand the answer, something kind of we'd like to follow up and get a little bit more clarity on. There was a question that was actually asked, kind of, is this plan actually going to work? The question that came up was, well, could a developer come and just kind of build out a parking lot in that commercial section and use that as the parking for the housing? If a developer comes in and kind of wants to redevelop the entire property, would the entire development fall under these housing laws because part of the development is going to be housing, or would the housing laws just apply to the orange section? And I wasn't quite sure on the answer to that. So there may be kind of some loopholes and technicalities that we need to understand a little bit better. But one concern that was raised is could they actually get around this by just kind of like putting a parking lot over the commercial side and then kind of building the housing the other part. So one kind of actually approach they used in other village centers that avoids that problem. This is kind of further down Maw. There's two little retail centers further to the east on Maud that are part of Village Center 4. And the city's zoned those just for commercial. You can't build any housing there. So if the city zones it like this, there's no way that a developer could come in and ask for waivers or concessions for these properties. But there was a question kind of, if you put a little bit of housing there, is it still going to be enforceable? All right, so actually my things going over. At this point, I'd actually like to turn it over. There's a group that's lives kind of very close to Village Center 5. This is the one that's getting redeveloped at Fair Oaks. That the plans are already underway, and this was actually a big part of the Planning Commission meeting. There's a lot of discussion on this at the Planning Commission. So I'd like to turn it over to them next to follow up with Village Center 5 discussion.
Okay. Hello, my name is Manshu Sethi. I represent the North Sunnyvale community in the Fair Oaks Plaza. Nice to meet you all. First time at the meeting today, so thank you for having us. And Christina O'Gwyn is my, part on Zoom, who's also going to be a few slides, but she's actually the one who's showing the slides. So thank you again for having us. I want to talk a little bit about what Chuck said and continue the theme of the point of keeping retail. And this North Sunnyvale community itself, the Fair Oaks Plaza specifically, is, we'll go into more details as to what exactly we're talking about here. Next slide, please. So as Chuck mentioned, this is the new VCMP plan that's been proposed by the city. And so because there is an application already on this site, this necessarily does not apply. As soon as the application is denied, or if it expires, then this plan would apply. And so what you see here is that it's been rezoned to have commercial only on the right side, and then the mixed use on the left side. And we did have a chance to meet with the developer a few days ago. And what he did tell us was, well, before we get into that, I think, if you are familiar with this Fair Oaks Plaza, what that means with the VCC, the Village Center commercial, is that the Taj Mahal would be preserved, and so would the Speedies, based on this. So if you're familiar with that site, that's what that would mean. So if the application did not succeed, this is what would end up going into place. So we did have a chance to meet with the developer, and he was fairly adamant that it's not going to be happening in terms of having more retail. So he has two plans that he's discussing currently with the city. The first plan is to have 4,200 square feet. That's 2.5% of the entire site, square footage wise. So 4,250 square feet, basically. So if you know about Speedies where it is, that's it, nothing else. Everything else gets demolished and gets turned into housing. The second option that he has been discussing directly with the city is to add 5 more thousand square feet to that site. And basically that amounts to exactly 5% commercial. So we're talking about maybe a couple of, or one shop and one Speedies. So, and I think this is, we just wanted to talk a little bit about why we feel this is, not sufficient for where we are, right? So I think the next slide, please. Okay, so the Fair Oaks Plaza currently is a vital hub to many of us who live in the community. I lived there for 15 years. We are one of the newer residents who live in the Fusion Townhome complex right across the street from Fair Oaks Plaza. And it is a vital hub for us to shop, socialize, in addition to also access services. And this is all within walking distance for us. And so walkability, livability, and sustainability is one of the three, priorities the city actually itself has in terms of, having this kind of site. And many of the grocery stores here do provide, they do provide, services that are utilized. There are a lot of cultural sites as well. So Taj Mahal is a cultural grocery store, ethnic grocery store, serves halal meat, has, Filipino grocery stores also there. We have a few restaurants there that are also, we have an Indian slash Nepali, restaurant there. We have a Thai restaurant there. So many ethnic sites there. We also have a barber salon. We have a dental care, and we even have youth programs that the community kind of utilizes, including Taekwondo, right? So we have some friends who have kids who go and, utilize that service. And one thing to kind of note is that this part of North Sunnyvale comprises of about 25% of seniors, basically. And this also is a site where 70% of the folks that live in this community are considered low income. So their annual income is less than 110,000, right? So that is below the median household income. And again, these are residents who are very, very dependent on this plaza, right? So this plaza also supports over 100 local jobs and stability for locally family-run businesses. And so I'll top it off with the fact that there has been, for the last 10 years, 2,100 new homes have been built there. So this is already serving as a good community hub for folks, but now there's 2,100 new homes who have actually been built because this is one of those sites, right? That people have come, okay, well, there's a grocery store right here. I want to move here. And then there's another 1,000 that are in the works right next to Swiggles Park. We just found out about it last week. So I think we're basically just, asking all of us to think about this more, because I think the city or the planning, council has maybe not thought about this in terms of how it impacts folks. And for us, this is a thriving market. Taj Mahal serves about 800 customers a day. The grocery store serves the Filipino grocery stores serves fewer, 100 a day. But the restaurants themselves are also places where a lot of nearby offices go to eat as well, right? So during the day, we're seeing upwards of, like I think the pictures that are being shown over here, we're seeing over 100 cars in the parking lot between 12 and 2. So, there are long-time residents in the area who are, there's a small group of us about 100 of us that started a petition because we wanted to kind of let folks know, because folks in this area aren't even aware that this is happening. So they don't know about this at all, right? So so we have gone ahead and kind of created this petition to help make sure that we actually share, understand what the community is asking. The community is asking for the city to work directly with the state to add a waiver for this site. In addition, sites like this, which actually are central hubs for many of these residents. And we've already gone ahead and also mentioned that we want to preserve Lucky, which is our only full service grocery store. We want to make sure that there's commitment to long-term planning for future grocery stores and essential services. And we want to collaborate with the community we want the city and the state to collaborate with us for new housing proposals. We're not NIMBYs, right? We're not NIMBYs. We want to basically we welcome housing, but we also want to make sure that there is adequate retail as well to serve the community. And I think I'm going to hand it over to Christina. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I turned my video off because things are breaking up. So Hamacho, you might have to jump in if my audio gets bad. But so how else can we advocate? Definitely, we have the July 1st City Council meeting coming up at 7 p.m. On July 1st by Zoom or in person. And if you can't make it, you can still email your feedback. But we also really need our state. We need to reach out to our state senator and assembly member and get their help with working with our developers to preserve access to groceries and other essential retail. alongside planned housing developments and to introduce state legislation that ensures that there's balanced and responsible urban development to prevent food deserts. And these are some things we're thinking about recommending on July 1st. So you've heard some of these things from Himanshu already, but like, I think sometimes this is a really confusing issue. And sometimes, people are like, don't improve the plan. But I think what we're hearing is that, as much as we have concerns about village centers in general and how they're not being executed the way we had envisioned, we actually, and maybe we don't agree with the locations that were selected, we do need this plan to be passed as quickly as possible to preserve, like to save the 2 remaining sites that don't have applications, namely Lucky, right? So we do need them to approve it on July 1st. Actually, at the Planning Commission meeting, was really grateful that the planning commissioners called out that Village Centers 5 and 6 didn't actually have all the full rezoning in there. That was not included. And so they requested that those be included, and we would agree. Even if it doesn't apply to the current applications, we need that rezoning for commercial only to be represented in case something should fall through on those applications. So that's a strong recommendation. We also really need the city to reverse the historic trend of neglect in North Sunnyvale and prioritize rezoning for more commercial areas in North Sunnyvale, because now we will have to replenish, most likely. And we care deeply about our family-run businesses that are run by our neighbors, whose livelihood relies on the ability to sustain their businesses. So we want to ask the city to include budget to assist with relocation costs for them as well. So those are some things we're thinking about recommending. And I just wanted to finish by sharing some appreciation. I personally have lived in Sunnyvale for 30 years, and we haven't really been as involved in civic engagement locally. And honestly, like, I had never even heard of village centers until a few months ago and didn't know it was a thing I needed to be worried about. But since we began to learn about this and interacting with city staff and city council and Livable Sunnyvale, I've personally found almost everyone to be extremely responsive and helpful and concerned about the unintended consequences of the economic and legislative environment that we find ourselves in. And so I just wanted to thank our planning commissioners who have been asking hard questions and pushing for changes that are thoughtful and will better serve us long term for the health and safety of our community. I want to thank our council members who've shown care and want to do right by our community. Livable Sunnyvale, Chuck, like, I don't think I would understand this issue at all if it wasn't for you. But I also really appreciate Bruce's help supporting us in advocacy with the developer. Business owners who continue to feed us and work with us on this issue, even as they're facing uncertain futures, and fellow neighbors and residents who are helping to advocate on this issue by signing our petition and speaking up. So again, our state representatives have been less responsive. And so we would really love if everyone would, reach out to them and encourage them to help us out on this issue.
Yeah, online. And any questions here in the room?
Why are developers so resistant to retail?
Yeah, I could take a stab at that one. Right now, townhouses are cheaper to build. That's kind of the type of building that seems to be the most profitable. A lot of these comments come from developers, so take them with a little bit of a grain of salt. But the construction is a little bit cheaper. You don't have to build many stories with concrete podium on the base. So to build kind of retail on the first floor with housing on top, you typically have to kind of do a concrete podium on the bottom to get the big open spaces on the bottom for the retail, and then do wood framed building on top that is, from what we've been told, is more expensive to build that way. But one of the other reasons that that's been explained is that the way that you finance the townhouses is a lot better than the large scale apartments. With the townhouses, you can basically take out a loan to build the first row of townhouses, then sell the townhouses once they're done, then take out a loan to build the second row of townhouses, and then build those and flip them, and then take out the loan to cover the construction costs for the third row, and so on and so forth through the development. And with interest rates where they are, it's a lot cheaper to only have to finance a small part of the construction and at a time to kind of finance that first part, then sell them, then finance the second part. So it's basically kind of the cost. It's a lot cheaper to build townhouses than these large mixed-use developments.
Yeah.
Well, I think SB 330 also makes it easier for the developers, in my opinion. I think, before it was harder for them to develop, especially if there was community opposition. What we're finding now, and we're hearing it over and over again from the city, is that the SB 330 law itself has prevented the cities from actually pushing back or even asking for more than 5%, 10% retail, which is ridiculous, right? So we agree with you.
So tell me about what you think if the planning commission doesn't agree with 5 and dismisses it. So do you think that the city is willing to go to court?
Well, I think it depends on what grounds it dismisses it, I guess, right? So, I mean, I can't speak for the planning commission, but at the end of the day, we do think that this is environmental impact, that there is actually an impact on the community residents based on the 1,500 or so signatures we've gotten for the petition already. That suggests that the folks that are living in this neighborhood are impacted negatively by this law, by this development. So whether, what grounds the city denies, I can't speak to that.
And I will say that when this has been brought up at council, they have said that we wouldn't win. So we would invest a lot of money in legal and we wouldn't win. That's the concern. That's why we
Right, but
need
at
our
that
state
time, I don't think-
reps.
Right, but I think before that, though, Christine, I think when that discussion had happened, I don't know exactly to what extent other things like CEQA or other kinds of things were being brought in. And I'm not sure exactly how it can be brought in, but it is one of those things that, if the city has an opportunity to kind of ask for more retail or at least support the residents in some way, shape, or form, that would be what we're asking for specifically.
Just one more comment. I just want to say that I absolutely endorse or support this new village center plan. The one that was presented in 2017 is what got us into this mess. Because in 2018, when AB 330 was passed, the city was caught flat-footed. We had absolutely no objective standards. The city kept on saying we would have a master plan. We've been waiting for master plan. It was released on May 23rd. We've been waiting for that since 2019. I have no idea. It was supposed to be ready last year. It wasn't. This is a significant improvement. We have objective standards, and they've come up with the plan to divide each of the village centers into mixed use and commercial, which is a distinct change. And the other thing is I think we need to put a lot more effort into remaining village centers that can be saved, which is one where there's 3 different blocks. Another question is how long do we have left on the 1B? I think the conversion on Mary and Fremont, because I think that's been over a year, and I think they only have 24 months. So that's another open question. But the one that's on Tasman and Fair Oaks is another one that's across the street from the grocery outlet. But I think we need to concentrate on going forward as opposed to trying to knock sense into the developers, because I don't know if that's a fool's errand. And that's all I can say. But if it comes on July 1, please read it. It's available on the website, and we can probably put a link on the Democratic Club Center. But do read it. It's a little confusing, but it's a really good plan. much better than 2017 and evidently can be defended with the objective standards. Thanks.
Just one other concern is that the owner of both of those areas, it would, if he's still going to sell, whatever the issue is, we may be stuck with something that is much, much more expensive than what we have now. And we may not be able to save the groups that we have in there now. And so it's an interesting balancing act. We really need the retail, but boy, it's a lot of different entities have fingers in it.
I mean, we have a separate idea. I have a separate idea for that. I think, there's plenty of shopping centers we know about, mixed use shopping centers that we know specifically have a lot of open and vacant sites at the bottom, but have a grocery outlet area as one that we know, where the developers will sit for years without actually renting out those spaces, right? And I think the city or somebody could do something about actually charging them a vacancy tax so that those sites actually get rented. Right, this is one of those things that I think we don't utilize enough, right? So I think otherwise we just let the developers get away with it. So.
This is Ambrosia for people online. I have multiple comments on this. I live in a townhome that's not part of the village center. And it's a lifestyle living in a townhome. I don't know if anyone else does. It's really different. I have third-party garbage collection. I have a third-party water utility. And I'm really concerned about the general oversight with the HOAs and property management companies and the quality of life. Like, what was it, the 4A Lucky's development, where they're going to put the residences on the busy corner rather than tucked inside. And then the Lakewood development, which I forget which village center number that is.
6.
Yeah, village center number 6 with everyone living along the expressway. That's terrible. So in general, I have many concerns about that. And I don't know if any of us have the answer, but I'm really concerned, kind of what we just talked about with the empty retail at grocery outlet, which is supposed to be a village center. And was it an original village center? Yeah. And I like, that's, I think, almost a success, except for specialties in Pete's Coffee. And I don't know what is going on with Fremont Corners. Like, it just seems like unfinished and it's just sitting there. And this all just seems like, I don't know. I don't know what the city can do. But any insight about what can we do? What's the best way to make our opinions? I want to say complain, but make our opinions known. Is it going to the commission meetings? Is it going to council? It sounds like reaching out to assembly members and state senators as well would be helpful. But any advocacy tips, please?
Well, we're going to the council and we're going to the planning commission. I think they're probably tired of hearing from us. So I think, I mean, we definitely need more voices there, right? I think that's what we've done and kind of mobilize our community. I think Mike and folks can speak to the fact that I think, we've held their meeting up by 2.5 hours, just letting them know specifically what we're interested in and what is going to move our community, right? So I think your voice would be important there. That's my comment, but
Yeah, and I'll add on to that. I think all the advocacy that's been going on recently has actually pushed this process forward a lot faster than it otherwise would have happened. Like was mentioned, we've been waiting on this village center master plan for years and years now, and it's finally kind of council said, yeah, you actually need to get something to us, and I think a lot of that was in response to a lot of the advocacy that's been done on this. So that seems to be having a positive effect on the process.
And do reach out to your state reps,
and you
because
can
they
write as
represent
well.
many more people. And so they need to hear from many more people.
My name is Ishmael Diaz. Business owners are the ones that build communities. They help and have jobs. And a community without jobs, then they go after the counties, whatever, for help. As long as we make it easy for the developers to come and give them whatever they ask for, and then they put their conditions, and then we make it hard on the business owners to, have their businesses, stay. If we don't, help them out, then we'd have no jobs. We have no jobs. Then that's, the main idea. I'm speaking also for my, colleagues here, Taj Mahal, and it hurts me that I see the place is gonna go. I've been shopping for since he was in Santa Clara, and it's talk about over 30 years, and it's this is this is a disaster for the community to lose this kind of a place. So I'm hoping that the city, that do the same thing for the developers and help them out. Find a solution for these businesses to stay so that we have, jobs. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And Lauren had written in the chat something about whether it would be possible to incentivize retail. And I just wanted to say the increased retail is, I think, due to the incentive that was voted on March 18th, but the amount was so little. I mean, they just have to do 5 to 10%, and then they don't have to do as much below market housing was the deal they struck. But I do think this issue is important enough that we all should push for, bigger incentives for retail where it is needed. We would love to see Taj Mahal stay in our plaza. It might not be 27,000 square feet, but if we could get 10 to 15, could we make that work?
We shop there every day, right? And we live right across the street from Taj Mahal, and we see so many cars going there, right? So it's not just cars. We also see a lot of our neighbors walking there. So this is a walkable community. So we do call it, we do think that this is going to become a food desert. Within half a mile of that grocery store, there's going to be, like I said, more than 2,100, more than 3,000 new homes there. Right. And that's a lot of folks that are walking to the actual plaza.
Or a lot of people that'll be driving a long way to get food.
Exactly. Yeah. So it has become a huge part of the community. Right. So this is one of those things that is very sad, that is unavoidable. And it's it's unfortunate.
All right. We do have a couple of questions online. Martha?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I have some concerns about the Village Center 4 West, and I was just kind of concerned because you said they're expecting to build something like 60 to 80 units, I believe you said. And my worry is that's right on Matilda, and Matilda very close to where 101 and 237 are, and there's a lot of traffic there. If you add more units, that's more cars that you're going to have. And so I was just wondering if, is anybody else concerned about that? I think that would definitely add to the congestion on Matilda. And the other question I have, does anybody know how many of the apartments in downtown Sunnyvale are actually filled? I was just somebody asked me, do people actually live down here? Because I can't figure out they've been building forever, but I don't know how many of the apartments are actually filled.
Yeah, I
That's it.
did. Actually, that was a question that came up at our meeting last week, for the downtown. And the response, that we got, I think it was from city staff that had answered, is most of the apartments downtown, are rented out, and the vacancy rate is fairly low,
Okay.
for those. The other question on, the housing, so with the housing, like right now, the Lucky site is zoned for about, I think it was about 80 units of housing. So just right now with the way that the city, um, the general plan is set up, that site is identified as being able to, a developer could come in and build about 80 units. And the way that, the housing laws are set up is that cities can't take away housing. So if there's, housing that's been zoned for in the city can't just kind of arbitrarily take that away and reduce the amount of housing, um, that can be built in their city. Because that's another thing that the state, a lot of cities will go and kind of cut back on housing and cut back on housing and cut back on places that you could build housing, and the result is no housing gets built. So the state has come in and said, no, like if you have somewhere that's zoned for housing, if you want to take that away, then you have to find somewhere else in the city to accommodate it. And there are actually a whole bunch of rules around that I don't really follow. This would be a better question for city staff on that. But basically, you can't take away, housing that's already been zoned for in the city. And so the way that they tried to kind of restructure that village center four is, instead of spreading all the housing over, one part, they kind of consolidated up into that corner by the street. And there was a question or comment earlier about, like, why did they put the housing close to the street? And this is kind of a good question, and I'm going to interject kind of my perspective on this, or kind of my thoughts on this. Is there are two ways they've done the rezoning at different village centers. For that one, it seems like what the city was trying to do was preserve the Luckies. So they took the Luckies site and turned that into commercial only. And so then the remainder that was left was the area by the corner, and that's where they could put the housing. But as someone mentioned earlier, like if you were kind of building a development from scratch, that's probably not the ideal way you would do it. You would actually probably want to flip it and kind of put the residential little bit back, towards the edges. But again, this is my kind of perspective on it. It seems like they were trying to preserve the Luckies there. And that's why you wound up with the commercial out by the corner.
But it
And
doesn't,
it's,
sorry, it doesn't sound like they're very concerned about the amount of traffic that's going to be there.
so yeah, overall traffic, the studies that heard, kind of talking with people about this, the traffic should actually go down with, the housing. Like if you would actually replace the Luckies with just housing, that would reduce the amount of traffic there. Because Luckies has a whole lot of traffic. There are a lot of people driving in and out of there. And the amount of traffic that retail, actually generates is much more than housing. So the number of people that drive in and out of a grocery store each day is far greater than the number of people that would drive in and out of their houses each day. Like you would leave for work in the morning, you would come, home in the evening and maybe go out and run an errand or two during the afternoons. But the retail actually winds up generating more, um, um, traffic than the housing in general.
Chuck, one way I was thinking about this is by zoning for commercial and then having a small part that's mixed use. Does it give the city more power to, if a developer comes and says like, well, actually, I'd like to do housing here, and then I want to do a grocery store on the corner, like to be able to negotiate that? Whereas right now we're in a position where we can't negotiate at all. We just have to do whatever.
That is a good question. I don't know the city's motivations for this, but one result, like of this zoning, is that if a developer actually wants to change this and yeah, put the retail out by the corner and then the housing in the back, the developer actually has to come before city council and get city council to approve that. Yeah, so the city may have a little bit more leverage, but it's unclear if that was a motivation or exactly how much leverage that would be.
All
I
right,
don't
we
know if
do
that
have
answers your
another,
question. Actually, I apologize. I actually have to drop off in probably about 2 minutes. I'm heading out to Lake Tahoe this afternoon.
okay, we do have a question in the chat. Lauren, would you like to ask it live audio, or I could ask it? I could read it.
Sure. I think it was, we did have someone respond to it, but I'll ask it again because I think maybe what I had intended was a little different. My understanding is the lack of retail is a market issue. It's an economic issue. And so I haven't done any research on this, but are there financial incentives that the city can provide to developers who will keep retail in addition to doing the affordable housing, in addition to other types of housing? And I believe that like New York City has a policy or some sort of incentive in place to preserve or to make sure there's grocery stores, for example. So I'm just wondering if anyone on the call or if this has come up. And I don't even know, maybe there's unintended consequences of something like that too. So.
Yeah, actually, I can do a quick background. It was mentioned kind of briefly, but I think it was about 2 months ago, the city actually did try to look at this and say, what incentives can we offer developers to increase retail? And specifically for the developments at Village Center 5 and 6, what are the different incentives they can offer? They looked at a whole bunch of them. I'd have to go back and look at which city council meeting, but city staff actually kind of came up with this presentation of here's a whole bunch of different incentives that they looked at. So looking at things like reducing different fees that are charged for developers, like the park fees, and I forget what some of the other fees are. Changing density requirements, like actually letting the developers build more housing. So kind of the more housing you build, kind of the more profitable it would, in theory, become. And what they wound up settling on was actually reducing or basically eliminating the number of below market rate units the developers need to build. So for every housing development, the city says right now that a developer has to offer 15% of those units at below market rate. So the developer basically has to subsidize 15% of those for affordable housing units. And so if it's a rental unit, basically the developer has to rent it out at below market rates. Or if it's a townhouse, the developer has to sell the units at below market rates for 15% of the units. And what the city wound up choosing was to basically eliminate those requirements. So yeah, we won't require you to build any below market unit rates if you develop more retail. But as was mentioned, the amount of new retail that the developer actually came back with was fairly small in exchange for this, so it wasn't that effective. But the city was trying to come up with some incentives like that a couple of months ago.
All right, there is one more hand raised. Marianne, do you have a question? All right, I think her hand has been raised for quite a while, but and one more question in the back. Okay, this is Gail.
I love modern things. Okay, so on my phone, it looks like the 877 Fremont was approved in 2022. So I'm wondering if someone can explain what how the city works on if it's supposed to expire in 24 months. So if someone could explain that, that'd be great.
Yes, I don't know how that works. I don't know if Mike might have some insights into that.
I could be dead wrong on this. it seems to me if it expires, then they could either reapply for the permit, right? Or we would have enough time to change that drawing for that. I think it's 1B. I think it's Village Center 1B. I'm not sure, but maybe we could rezone that and change the way that one goes. Although that one has a medical building on the corner, and then I think it's 100 townhouses. And that process went through there's a lot of people that live in Eichler homes that are right behind the property on the Mary side. Yeah, I'm right, on the Mary side. And the developer did make many changes in addition to getting rid of 4 townhouses to accommodate what the Eichler home people wanted. So it could be that because of the economy being kind of kooky at the moment, the one on 877 Fremont could just expire. That's all I have to say about that.
Hello. If financing is a key consideration for developers to build the types of properties that serve the community in the best fashion, why can't Sunnyvale issue municipal bonds in order to finance these projects, or offer substantially lower interest rates to entice the sorts of development that serve the community?
So that is actually a very interesting question. That would be a good question to ask your council members. There actually is some movement at the state level to actually offer basically low interest rate funding for housing developments. But I don't know too many details about that, other than that there is some movement at the state level to try and look at that.
And I have a follow-up question about parking. Given that these sites are primarily getting infilled with lots of buildings, where are people going to park? I know that parking garages might be an option, but those are also following the heavy use of concrete, as you said, was very expensive. We actually have a parking garage at the corner of Tasman and Fair Oaks that for some reason has been closed off, probably due to illicit activity or other problems. Otherwise, it's just not even available, even though it's in existence.
Yeah, the master plan actually has a whole section on parking requirements. My personal perspective is they seem way too low. It seems generally that a number of the recent developments kind of throughout the city don't have enough parking, and then so parking spills onto the kind of the nearby streets and into the nearby neighborhoods, and understandably kind of makes all the neighbors upset. And my perspective is that just makes people resist housing because of all these consequences. We need to actually get this housing built in a way that doesn't have all of these negative effects, because it kind of understandably makes all the neighbors upset. But the parking requirements are fairly low. It's 1 parking space for a 1-bedroom. I think it's 1.25 for a 2-bedroom unit, and maybe 1.75 parking spaces for a 3-bedroom unit. Now, the difficulty though with the parking requirements in the master plan is that's the type of thing that developers can ask for waivers from. So under state law, a developer can come in and say, hey, we can't afford to build this parking, we need a waiver because it's just going to make it too expensive, and they won't build enough parking. So most of the actual parking requirements in the plan, at least the way state law is written right now, aren't very enforceable. But even if they were, at least from my perspective, they seem a little low.
I think that's all the questions that we have online or in the room. Oh, sorry.
I have a question. It may be kind of dumb, but most of the townhouses that I'm familiar with involve 2 to 3 floors. So what I'm concerned about is people with mobility problems like going upstairs, and also how they can access, what ends up happening is the person's usually people with mobility problems ends up living downstairs, so to speak. And so I'm just curious, if what is the definition of when you say townhouses, what is the definition? Thank you.
Yeah, usually what's getting built are, yeah, kind of like the 2-3 story townhouses. There have been discussions about accessibility requirements for those, and there are some, but I don't know the details. I don't know if it's like a certain percentage of the units need to be accessible, or kind of what the specific requirements are. Yeah, I don't know the actual requirements, but most of the units that are getting built are kind of, yeah, the 2-3 story townhouses.
Yeah, our facility, our townhome site itself actually has multiple plans. So there are some plans that actually have the ground floor where folks can actually live. And right across the street from us, a new townhome facility was built as well, where they actually also allow for that to happen. But I think there's probably some kind of a law that suggests that, you know, that should be allowed, yeah. But it depends on the plan as well that you're able to afford. So some plans, you know, the smaller plans, you have to hike up to get to your, you know, living space, right? There's nothing on the bottom floor except for your car, right? So it just depends on the plan.
That's one of my concerns, because I understand that our city of Sunnyvale is actually aging. And so what about the future? What about 10 years from now? You know, townhouses might be nice now for young people that work at places like Google or Apple, but what about people as they age? What about families? Right now, I see a lot of families living in townhouses that the kids really don't have accessibility for play area, except, you know, they have to drive to a location. So I am concerned about that. And I think that should be something that we should be thinking about and plan for that.
I mean, our facility itself, our site, we have 3 parks next to us, 1 block away. So I think the city itself was very conscious of that. But I think we have one too many parks and not enough retail. So I think that's one of those things that needs to flip as well. So I think we need to kind of balance that a little bit. Otherwise we have, and these parks some of them get utilized very heavily, others don't get at all, right? So the Muekma Park gets utilized very heavily. It's a great park. Swagels Park, not so much, right? So it just depends, but city is doing, I think it's best to kind of make sure that there's some park nearby for these younger families, for sure, yeah.
All right, one more question online came from Carol. Go ahead.
Yeah, I raised the question of accessibility with the townhouses on the corner of Fremont and Sunnyvale, Saratoga. I was on the planning commission then. I was told that if there is simply on the first floor a bathroom with accessible features and a bedroom, that met the state's ADA requirements. And I asked, what about, you know, the kitchen, which is on a higher floor, the living room? Apparently, the state does not have very strict ADA standards. That was the minimum, that on the first floor there be a bedroom and a bathroom, you know, with the grab bar and toilet that is accessible. I mentioned that in some cities like San Diego, some of the townhouses actually have elevators. And I was told, no, that makes it very expensive. They're not required to do that. So in the existing village center, then I believe the end unit of each block has an accessible unit, accessible being with reference to that very first floor.
All right. Well, thank you very much for everybody for participating in this. Thank you, Chuck.
All right.
For you're free to go to Tahoe now.
Thank you. It was good to talk to everybody.
Okay, thanks. Okay, the final topic, and Peggy, are you able to get that presentation up? Because my computer has just gone into full tilt crash mode here. It doesn't even pretend it's going to work. So. Okay, great. Okay, you know, as you may know or may not know, Sunnyvale is a charter city. So we have a charter. It's kind of like our constitution in a way. Like when we went to district elections, we had to put something before the voters that would vote on changes to the charter in order to make that happen. And last election, there were a number of proposals to change the charter on the ballot that were rejected by the voters. So we have a new charter review commission. And this is really just a quick kind of summary of where we are. Peggy, maybe a full screen. So this presentation is entirely by Gustav Larson. I mean, I should mention we practically have a quorum for the committee on our board. Crystal is on the committee, Gail is on the committee, Martin is on the committee. Who else? Anyway, David. So they can't present this. So I'm presenting it. I'm the least informed person in the room on this, probably. But Gustav gave an excellent presentation as the chair, and I just stole his presentation. So that should make it easier. Okay, here we go. So I have edited it a little bit at the end. So the agenda here this was from a joint meeting of the Charter Review Committee and the City Council for the purpose of getting direction from the council on what are the next steps. So the progress to date, the committee was chosen. They looks like had 2 meetings reviewing the charter, reviewed each section, which is pretty lengthy. This is a lot of work. Identified topics, got input from the public. Then they broke into subcommittees to research in depth particular aspects of the charter, and then they ranked 12 topics. The committee did. And so at this meeting, they were asking council to kind of draw the line. Which ones do they want the committee to go ahead with? So these were the highest priority issues for them to potentially look at. This is what the committee selected. The first one, alternative project delivery methods for public works. This is a little complicated, but I think the charter required a separate process for design and build. So you had to do an RFP, get designs, and then do another RFP and get bids for who's going to build it, which lengthened the process, made it a lot more expensive. And the idea is to combine the design and build, so someone could just come and say, we will, whatever the project is, we will design it and build it for this amount of money, which makes sense for anybody who works in these areas. So that's one thing they're looking at, but that needs a charter change. They're also looking at council salaries and compensation, and anybody who's involved with city activities at all, the work the council does just showing up for these things is goes way beyond the level of compensation. So that's my opinion. They're looking, they're going to look at that. They're, well, I won't say they're going to look at it. These were their proposals for things to look at that they ranked highest. Changing the redistricting commission process. So every new census, nominally every 10 years, they have to redo the districting. And so that's looking at possible changes there. And to remove gender specific language from the city, really all the city ordinances and city documents. So instead of pronouns, it would just say, instead of saying the mayor and then saying he, she, or whatever, it just will just say the mayor, and then the mayor does this, the mayor does that, which makes it more clear and makes it gender neutral. Okay, next slide. So these are lower priority, clarifying the mayor's responsibilities. We have a full-time elected mayor. I would say we have an elected mayor now. How we handle council vacancies and appointment rules, looking at that. The city council meeting frequency, this was to specify a number of meetings per year or meetings per quarter or something like that. Right now, I think it's every 2 weeks, which is means that they're like in the summer, it's not possible to have a larger gap so people can take a vacation. And so looking at that, and 8 here was raising the amount of money that where the city manager, if there's a settlement for a lawsuit or something like that, to raise the dollar amount that he can approve, just approve it by himself without going through a big process. And and these are the lower priority. I think we can skip these. So what they were asking is for the council to narrow this down to 4 or 5 amendments to the charter that they would look at. They're supposed to finish by the end of 2025. So they thought this was what they could handle, just 4 or 5 amendments. And, you know, they could make some of them steady issues, just some of them changing policy, and so on. So let's see, next slide. Also, this was the committee suggestion. Some of these could possibly be combined into one item. So this is, I added this after the meeting. This is what council directed the committee to look at. So number 1, compensation for to look at city council salaries and compensation, including the mayor, but they did not want to modify the role of the mayor. Seemed to be a lot of concern for that, and there was pushback on the idea of a full-time mayor. Although I could just, from my own experience, what I see the mayor currently doing, just what I see just passing by events or whatever, is full-time. And obviously I only see a small percentage, but anyway, so this was just to look at the compensation. Look at the process for appointing, if a council member, you know, a vacancy happens, how they fill that. They did change this maybe 4 years ago with the last charter commission. They did change that. You may remember we had when was it? About 8 years ago, we had a very expensive election here because a council member left like a week too early, and they had to hold an election for 3 months or something. which was very expensive to fill that position. And so that was changed so they could appoint a council member, but this would look at some other changes to that process. We mentioned how they instead of having 2 council meetings per month, require at least 24 meetings per year. And this is the number 4 is the provision to allow the city manager to settle claims against the city in an amount greater than 50,000, and they will decide what that amount is. Other surrounding cities have a much higher limit. And finally, we mentioned this design build, bid build is changing that so that someone can just come with a design and build proposal. So that's an update. This has to be at the end of the year. This committee meets regularly and takes public input. So, changes to the charter have a big impact, and then this will go to council, go to the voters. The idea is in the 2026 election. So, are there any questions? I hope not, because I've just told you everything I know about this. Or comments if somebody's watched the
Yeah, I was just saying, it's the first time I've seen these proposals. I missed Gustav's presentation before. I don't know where he presented before, but it's interesting. So the last slide is what, if I understand correctly?
The last slide is what the council, out of those items identified by the committee, they said, these are the ones you should go ahead and look at.
I see. Well, and I don't want to recreate all the deliberation that happened with that, but I think you mentioned that the ranked choice voting was not up for discussion because we were going to wait till the county did something. And what was that?
Right. Well, I didn't mention that, but that was that was certainly discussed as a possibility and was ranked lower because the county is looking at some things, and the feeling was this was not something that was viable to put on the ballot for 2026.
Is it the case that cities and the county still have to wait for the county to decide on something before we can decide to do it?
Well, the county on some level raises the they implement, they have the infrastructure for elections. I don't suppose Steve Chesson is still on.
I'm sorry, I'm still here. What was the question?
Okay, did you hear Charlene's question? She's asking about ranked choice voting, and did we need to wait for the city, the county to do something before moving ahead?
Technically, no. You could have a charter amendment that says the city will implement ranked choice voting once the county does, and you could move forward on that. You'd probably get a better report of the feeling of the Charter Review Committee from David Newswanger. I don't know if he's in this meeting today or not, but my understanding is that the feeling among the council members that are supportive of ranked choice voting is that they would rather wait to see the county implement it first before putting a charter amendment on the ballot.
Okay. And can you show your slide again, Mike, the first one, where you were given choices for council to decide? I thought some of those were quite interesting. Let's see.
So you say rank them? So that'd be
No,
the,
no, not this one, but one of the first one. Yeah, let's see. Yeah,
there,
let's see.
okay.
Um,
David Newswanger is not at this meeting. He is on the committee, but if he was here, he probably couldn't say anything about it, so.
what was the debate about number 3, which was the redistricting commission process? Like what needs to be decided on there?
Yeah, I don't remember what the discussion was
Okay.
there. I think it more fine tuning the process.
All right. And what is the next slide? Can I? Oh. Sure.
Hi, this is Ralsei. The debate was some of it being that some of the districting, like my district, where it was only one person who ran for office, whether or not that needed to take be looked at more. But we also wanted, there was some kind of pause because the redistricting process isn't till 2030.
So we decided that this is something that needs to be done before the next census, but given the time frame that this would be going on to the ballot before we would theoretically have another election, and it would theoretically be able to get put on later. So we decided that could be pushed off. We have a certain budget set aside for the number of potential charter amendments that will go on, and just prioritizing both the committee's time and staff's time, we decided that was something that could wait until the next election.
The next one. Okay, that's all. Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I had a question. This is Ambrosia for people online. Just about not so much the history, but the language update. Like I thought I thought the residents voted the last election on that kind of all the things, right, were in that little bill, including the language that the charter review wants to update. And I guess I just have a question of like, what does that mean? What's the context there?
Well, there were several things on that proposal, which I think they thought were innocuous enough that they would pass, and they didn't. So it's hard to tell what voters were thinking, right? They may have liked 3 of them, but not the other one, or who knows? So I think it's very hard to interpret anything from that result.
Any hands raised online? No other questions in the room?
Are we able to get a copy of these slides? How does that work? Is this public knowledge or?
These slides, well, except for the last one, which I added, which is the council's direction. This is on the, I don't remember the date for that meeting, the joint meeting of the committee and the council. It was maybe, when was it? June 3rd. So the slides are on there along with the recording of the whole meeting, and posted on the website for the Charter Review Committee are the these items that the council recommended. So that's all available. You just have to find it. And it's on the city's website. As we all know, it's very easy to navigate there. So you should be able to pick it up before we leave here today. So.
And I'll just say 2 things. This was this was not in priority order. These are just the 5 things. And the next meeting of the Charter Review Committee is June 30th at 5:30 p.m.
Okay, anything else on that? Well, this was definitely a meeting heavily impacted on by the Brown Act, because we have numerous experts on all these in the room or readily available, but none of them can talk about any of these things because they're in a position to make a decision. Just as we close, then I want to basically request some input, not necessarily right now, but in future meetings. I know Naomi mentioned the CADEM convention, and that we don't really have as a party, we don't really have a plan going forward. And I think that's sort of true. What I hear from most of our leaders is we need to do the same thing we did last time, but try harder. And that's really not a very good plan, in my opinion. And I think this is something where we, not necessarily just the people in this room, but we collectively, we have to come up with new directions and new plans, new policies, and that will filter up. And we live in a particularly creative area, so I think it might be useful at some point to have that as a topic of a meeting. We could discuss it. There's a lot of ways to look at that. At the last meeting, Patrick Aarons mentioned the book Abundance, and I have, I've read that, and that is sort of a different formulation, and it addresses unintended consequences of legislation, and the idea that at least many cities, but particularly Democratic run cities, have sort of lost the ability to do things, to constructively do things, whether it's infrastructure for climate change, whether it's affordable housing, all of these things. So it's worth looking at that, and also to collect whatever ideas we have going forward that we can use. So it's something we might want to think about and structure a meeting around and talk among ourselves. But I think the new ideas will come from community groups like this that will catch on and spread, and then the party leaders who admittedly have been doing certain things for a long time, not terrible things, but not necessarily effective. So that hope we can come up with some ideas. But I think I think Cory Booker has pointed this, no one's going to come in from outside and save us. We have to save ourselves. So anything else or any other announcements before we close? All right. Well, thank you all very much.